I've eaten a lot of raccoon. Yes. The answer is yes. And I've eaten it hunting. I've actually had it served by my mom at the table away from hunting. And I have eaten raccoon. And yes, it's not uncommon at all. I'll tell you something that is one of my favorites is squirrel. And it's wonderful, and my mother could do a great job of it. And we all had our favorite pieces, and my dad and sister, I have one sibling, a sister, and they would fight over, not fight, but my mom and I, they were just my sister and I as far as siblings. My mom and I wouldn't even ask for the brain in a squirrel.
Oh, man. Oh.
And delicious, seriously.
My dad loves cow brain.
My sister always got it, or my dad.
The fight over the brain. Jerry?
The fight over the brain. I'm beginning to think that Jerry Jones has been losing that battle. Good evening, good people. Mark Holmes here, and as always, I want to say thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report. Without you guys, as well as you ladies, you know that this literally does not work. We are dealing with the aftermath of the Dallas Cowboys, as always, screwing the pooch. Now, for those out there, you're going to say, "Oh, you crying because we fired Mike or didn't bring Mike McCarthy back." No, that's not the problem. That's not it. I've said all along. I've said all along that I don't care which way or the other. That as long as you have a plan, let's have a plan of what we're going to do. And let's do it as quick as possible. Don't sit here and take all damn day. Now, before I get a little deep into it, let's go to the lovely and talented Jane Slater, who was just on 105.3 The Fan.
Slater to talk about all the happenings of the day with the Dallas Cowboys. Now, Jane, welcome to the show. We know Mike won't be back. What else can you tell us besides that?
Here.
Mike McCarthy won't be back.
Well, Bassick, I'm glad that you're still here. There's been years with Jerry and you. I didn't know if you'd make it back, so we're glad to see that you've lived another day.
Thank you.
Has anything... further. Go ahead, Jane.
Yeah, I would just say I was beginning to get a sense that this wasn't going to move forward with Mike McCarthy. And I don't have this confirmed yet, but my sense, based on some of the conversations I've had, is it doesn't sound like this was Jerry deciding that he no longer wanted Mike here. This might have been Mike saying, I'm going to move on. And a lot of that, according to staffers that I've spoken with, had to do with this contract sticking point. He was already frustrated, and, he's done this on the record, off the record, Mike, with us reporters and even up at the podium with fans, frustrated about how he and his staff went into this year with expiring contracts. I think they felt like that limited them, that it was tough on their families. As I've gotten a little bit longer in the tooth, even with this job, you get to know the families, and it is hard. But I think everybody, as Jerry said, smallest violin in the room. Everyone knows that that's part of the business. But I think what a lot of people don't have the appetite for is, all right, the season came to an end. They were already on expiring contracts. Should this decision, and if you were going to bring him back, at least some parameters already be in place? And that didn't seem to be the case. The way it was characterized to me, these conversations with Mike in the last week weren't about hard numbers or length. It was really just about the end of the season, how things could have gone. And I think that started to rub him a type of way. And so I think when he ultimately came down here and then, he was denied permission to interview for the Bears job, I think there was some frustration. Now, I will also say when I first heard about the Bears job, I thought this is just a ploy to get his, to sort of like put chum in the water, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But I was told by both sides on this that the interest in Mike was real in Chicago. And I think Chicago is interesting, if I'm Mike, because of Caleb Williams, because of Roma Dunzier. I was just up there covering them in Seattle. This is an opportunity for Mike, if this was a job for him, to really put his stamp on the offense. I had spoken to somebody last week about just this offense and, how much, Mike's involved, how much has changed. And I was shocked to learn that it apparently wasn't that different from what Jason Garrett had here. I mean, there was obviously some elements that were different. And when I asked, well, how long would it take to put this coaching staff, mark on it, I was told, tell me what we're working with and how long. So I thought that was really, really interesting. So yeah, and then, I think that the Saints thing is, Mike McCarthy, I remember talking to the Saints because I also cover them a couple years back about Mike. And when I say he is beloved in that building, the Saints are not dissimilar from the Cowboys in the way they sort of, they keep it in the family. There hasn't been a lot of change at the top. Mm-hmm. A lot of their regime over there is very similar. Obviously, he's got a relationship with Jeff Ireland and Mickey Loomis and knows Mrs. B well. So I definitely think that's in play, although I have not gotten that confirmed from Mickey Loomis that they have an interview set up. But I think it would make a lot of sense.
Jane, do you feel like this was a kind of a shock to the Joneses, to their side of it, and they're kind of like, okay, now we got to scramble and put things together, or was it more, we are preparing for this?
Well, I don't want to get a call from Todd or Jerry and say that I'm wrong,
Gotcha.
but my initial sense feels like maybe they did not expect. And again, I don't know that for a fact.
Gotcha.
But I think that, Jerry and Stephen will always say deadlines make deals. I'm sure that maybe there was a thought that, given that Mike wants to be here, and again, I know the fans don't want to hear this, but multiple players wanted Mike back. I mean, a lot of them are big fans of him. Maybe Jerry thought that he could use that wiggle room to get a contract that was advantageous to him. But it sounds like once they weren't able to get really the length of it, because as was described to me, a coach told me that Mike had reached out to a bunch of the guys this morning and basically said something along the lines of, let's see what he said.
She's looking through her notes, Kevin.
Looking through my notes.
She's a notepad.
Looking through
she writes in shorthand.
I get that.
Not agreeing on a contract link puts everybody out of a job.
Oh.
Okay, so
that's what he was saying to his staff, is what you just said?
Players, right?
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
So let's say that Mike McCarthy was kind of standing up for himself, standing up for his staff. I'm saying that, not you. Let's say that was the case. There were fewer fans at training camp this year for the Cowboys. There seems to be some optimism today on our fan text. This is going to spark some semblance of revolution that's going to make the Cowboys rethink the way they do business. Do you think there's any chance of that? Or are we going to end up with Zimmer, or we're going to get Kellen Moore as the head coach and business as usual?
I mean, I don't know. I would hope that this time around they would cast a larger net. I don't know if anybody's been able to disprove this, but I just remember the coaching staff as related to Jason Garrett. Mike McCarthy did that sit down with my colleague Tom Pelissero at NFL Network, and all of a sudden he was in the mix. Ron Rivera and Marvin Lewis. I don't remember there being any other coaches that they pursued. And then remember Jerry Jones Jr., and Jerry told us at that opening presser that they had gone out to dinner, and Jerry Jones Jr. leaned over to his father and said, I think we found our guy. And that's how it went down. I don't know if they were being tongue-in-cheek. That's how they described it on the podium that day. But I would hope that they would cast a larger net. Now, I know Sark's name's been thrown out there, and people have talked about Lane Kiffin. I'm working all these angles. Just keep in mind, particularly with a lot of these college coaches, they're going to be very careful about telling you interest or where they're going, because that impacts recruiting. And so I'm not saying it's true and I'm not saying it's not true, but we may not hear as much about the college coaches just because of the recruiting stuff. I mean, that could even apply to Dion. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be, I think Jerry's picking up the phone today. I think they're going to be exploring the interests of a lot of these coaches. I do know that there are coaches that say, it's a no for me on an NFL job, but, as dysfunctional as it might look like to the outside world, the Dallas Cowboys, it is still one of the most coveted jobs. And I've gone to Combine, and I've had guys like Mike Vrabel and Cliff Kingsbury say to me, Jane, will you please introduce me to Jerry Jones? I mean, I joke with both of them. They were like fanboys this one day. And so there are people that will want to come to Dallas. I mean, this is why you and I work here, guys. Like, it is, but I've always said it's a little bit like the golden handcuffs, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
There are things that come with it. And because I get to go.
All right, I'm going to, it's going to go on and on and on. But here's where this going full circle, per Jordan Schultz, Bill Belichick would have been interested in the Cowboy job. It is believed that the Dallas would have been interested in him. Had he known the position would become available, Belichick and his camp never received any indication during his back channel conversations, which is partly why he ended up at UNC. Wow. And he's got supposedly an excellent relationship with the Jones family. Also, per Jordan Schultz of Fox Sports, by the Cowboys waiting a week to part ways with Mike McCarthy, the Cowboys will now have to wait until after the Detroit Lions season ends before they can try to speak with Ben Johnson or Aaron Glen. So not only have you waited, and some of the candidates are already being picked up, you have also made it even longer before you can talk to some of these guys. You could have talked to Aaron Glen and Ben Johnson. I don't think Ben Johnson would take the job here because of the way the Cowboys run the organization. But you definitely don't know. So that's where we are. It is a Black Monday, a week late. The Cowboys always seem to make the wrong move, and they seem to take too damn long to make it. We'll keep following this. I've been looking here because I want to see if Micah Parsons does his podcast today. It is almost 6 o'clock, and I don't see a link for it or a preview for it. So maybe Micah doesn't show up today. We'll wait and see, and we'll keep looking for more of the fallout. I'm Mark Holmes, and, well, I appreciate you guys. Peace.